Good. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. I enjoyed the movie. Watched it last night.
Thank you.
I think I just became a bit enamored by all the footage, the archive footage of just people being really great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that helps, right?
yeah. I'm gonna begin just by asking about the sort of genesis, really, to this project and where this sort of idea came from for you to tackle the theme of greatness in a movie.
It came about because I grew up playing competitive sports. I played Division I college hockey, and I've been thinking about my whole life, kind of ideas about psychology, genetics, parenting. How to reach the highest level, and watching what coaches are doing and who succeeds, who doesn't, and why, and all that stuff, and not just in sport but also in you know the business I'm in and everywhere else in the world, right? We all think about these things. That's what we think about, because we're trying to succeed, right? And I felt that you know something was wrong with how we view a lot of things, and the way things work, where most of the time it's kind of, for some reason, like, instead of encouraging creativity, we stifle it, where that's the most important thing in achieving greatness. You know what I'm saying? You constantly have to battle the obstructions to being creative, even in your work too, I'm sure. You're just constantly battling it, um, because there's the pressures of conformity and the fears and all this stuff, right? So to me, the most important thing in sport and any other field is really, when I go to the stadium, I want to see something amazing, surprising, be on the edge of my seat. And what is that? It's somebody on the field that is expressing creativity in their own way, right? That's what greatness is. Like, I don't want to see anything else. I'm not out there to see yeah, I want the team to win, but it's not really that. I want to see something great. That's why I'm spending money. These guys are performers, but yet that's not really, I realize, first of all, okay. So I realize that's not what coaches and teachers are encouraging. You go to the stadium, you want to see creativity, but then you try and work on that. And the most of the time people are always trying to stifle it. You know what I'm saying? In school, or your coaches, and creativity in sport is not something that people talk about. It's almost looked at as like a feminine thing, or that's not really what we're doing. We got to be, the coaches are very, oftentimes narrow-minded, and they try and hold on to their authority, and anyone who challenges it is punished, and you know what I'm saying? So that's the way that I was feeling. And so I felt that I wanted to make something that really gets to the heart, the true nature of greatness, in a way that we haven't seen before, to open people's eyes to a different way of understanding sport and maybe themselves, that can lead to a healthier and more enjoyable experience with it. A lot of kids, the reason why they don't want to play sports is it's not fun. Because why is it not fun? Because coaches make it not fun, right? And then they don't like sports anymore, and there's no reason why that should be. I just think that, if you look at it more open-minded and more about creating a sense of joy for athletes, then you'll have a lot better results and a lot better experiences in sport. And so that's why I made it. I mean, that's kind of long-winded, and I got into other things too, but
No, but it's incredibly resonant for me because I'm a big football fan, so I'm a
yeah,
soccer fan, and I've
yeah,
got a season ticket at my team, which is Tottenham, and we had a manager who played it the right way. He was creative, it was attacking, it was enjoyable, and we
yeah,
didn't win anything, and he was
yeah,
labelled, and the team was labelled as a failure in England over here for not winning anything, and yet I went to the games every weekend and enjoyed myself. And we've since
yeah,
hired a manager who's Jose Mourinho, who's all about winning, but the ugly way, defending
yeah,
his way to 1-0 victories. And
yeah,
there's this kind of conflict at the moment where some fans are like, they just want to win by any means. But
Yeah,
I want to be entertained. I want to spend my money and leave the stadium thinking
exactly.
I've enjoyed myself today, not just been sat there bored. So
Exactly.
it's a really resonant theme for me, and it's actually turning me off football. So I really enjoyed
Yeah.
your take in this movie.
Well, listen, think about filmmaking too, right? Is the goal to get 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, or I don't know, what is the goal, like, to the box office, whatever, but if you don't have people out there, like, taking risks and doing something different and still beautiful expressions, but you start to get these homogenous expressions, then there's no voices, there's nothing that interesting. It's the exact same thing, and there's a lot of fear. What is winning? I think we have to ask that question. What is a true victory in sport or filmmaking? I think it's just about really entertaining people, engaging them. I don't understand why. Yeah, like that. Some people, they're obsessed with just winning. They don't even understand why. That's not even the point. The point is the beauty, the joy of combinations. I'm talking about football right now. Like seeing something brilliant. What are you watching? Like you could watch robots or go watch people play video game sports. And see who win. Right?
Yeah, well, because do you think there's any chance, maybe this is wishful thinking, that this whole kind of pandemic that's going on at the moment could have a knock-on effect into that field, in the sense that right now over here, all the TV programs about sort of football and all the sports in the UK are celebrating the beauty of the sports. It's showing old games, it's showing classic goals and all this sort of stuff. And suddenly the result almost feels futile in the kind of contextually in the kind of world at the moment, with sort of so much going on. But do you think there's any chance we might go back to sports after the kind of COVID pandemic and maybe realize what it is we loved about them, and perhaps readdress our sort of relationship with sports? Or do you think I'm being wishful in that idea?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about what the virus is doing to sport and also people having a little more time and unstructured time, right? Because you're not going to work, especially athletes, right? And young athletes, right? Because they're not going to team practice. They can still practice on their own. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting innovations and creativity happening from that. Now, whether people are going to make that connection, let's say that's in my film, that hey, let's refocus what this is all about. I don't know. I think they really need to make these connections, like, and they need to be strong connections, and then those in power need to make those changes. I mean, do I think that the masses are going to demand, enough of this shitty English football? Like, let's do something creative. Come on. I don't know, like, how that can become a massive movement. I do think that it's the players, like it's about young players saying, like guys like who is that, like George Best, he
Yeah,
was interesting. I mean, I know he's Irish, right? Or
yeah, yeah,
I think it's,
Irish.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what kind of football do you like to watch?
Oh,
If
I
you were
like to
to
watch
say,
good
oh, I wish
football.
that the British, which is what some people think it's, well, what is it?
Yeah, well, for me, it's well, I mean, obviously, I grew up supporting a team that didn't win much, so it was all about the performance. But I love the kind of
Yeah, yeah,
passing game, the flair, because also for me, what makes
yeah,
football so great is the spontaneity. It's not. It obviously it's a tactical sport, but there's so much freedom of expression in football. So
yeah.
that's what I love about it. I'm just hoping maybe the kind of the win by any means approach might be softened as a result of COVID. I don't know. But I'm just wondering, with your obviously wading through so much archive footage of greatness, particularly in sports, I was wondering which moment you deemed as the most kind of incredible. I think for me, from the documentary, the Michael Jordan, when he kind of looks like, when he kind of that, well, you see it about twice, I think, in the film. I was just wondering if there was one single moment in the kind of archive footage you found that most took your breath away.
I thought, well, like what Muhammad Ali was doing, I just like love the way he moved in the ring, and it wasn't even that he was knocking people out. It was that the way he dodged a punch, he didn't even put his hands up, and he would play. He was dancing. He was dancing in the ring, and like it was poetry and beautiful. And I love that, we think of boxing as being of vulgar and but he's the only one that ever did that. And would you agree that that was the most fun to watch, a guy like that? Why aren't there more people
I
doing that?
know. It's the smile
Yeah,
on his face as well when he ducked
I
all of those
know.
punches.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was wondering too, because obviously one of the big themes, one of the things that a lot of the great sort of athletes and stuff talk about is mentors. They talk about people that help them along their way. I was just wondering about yourself personally as a filmmaker, if you had any sort of guiding presences in your life, and who would you was anyone that you would deem a real mentor in your career?
I would say like the pretty much one of the only guys that I would consider a real mentor, a guy that I actually talk to a lot. I don't know. For me, it's been incredibly hard to come by. Uh, I don't know why, but maybe I'm myself kind of like more isolated in a way. I'm kind of in my own world, and I don't know. Maybe I feel like no one wants to help me or something. But a guy named Verner Hertzog, who he basically I produced a movie called Bad Lieutenant when I first started in the business, and we developed a great relationship. And and he really, it's not like I call him every week or whatever, but every so often, he'll come over, we'll have a drink or whatever, a meal. And yeah, it's incredibly helpful and inspiring. If I have any kind of blockages or questions, he always comes at it from a very unique perspective, very unique. He's incredibly resilient guy too, where nothing seems to get in his way. So we have a really strong relationship. I actually wish I talked to him a little bit more, but I feel like I don't want to bother him. Mm.
Because another thing that a lot of the guys were talking about was the role of the kind of the parent. I just wonder, and specifically actually in the documentary, it was the role of the father. I was wondering how responsible do you think sort of parents have to be in harnessing kind of talent in a young child, because it's quite a sort of delicate ground, isn't it, to get it right and not and
Yeah.
ensure they don't grow up and hate the kind of craft that they could excel in.
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope to find that balance too. I've got a 2-year-old, and just hoping that I allow for them to fall in love with things enough. I don't think that I'm gonna really like be a pushy guy ever, especially what I know from these greatest athletes and from what I know about myself. There's no, you should never be pushing, but you should try and find what is beautiful and enjoyable about things, whether it's math or a sport or piano. Like, what is it really about that's really interesting about it, and try and show your kid about that beauty, and they can fall in love with it, and then let them learn in their own way, because everyone learns a little bit differently. you know
Yeah,
and so
it's quite tough though, isn't it? Because I imagine there is that fine line of wanting to really support their passion, but not push
yeah,
them too far into it. But yeah, it's a
yeah,
tricky
yeah,
one.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mm. So one of the quotes from the documentary, I can't remember who said it, but it was the species. It was the quote was a species that lives on ideas, which was one of the quotes in there. And you sort
Yeah.
of touched upon this before, but I was wondering, obviously, at the moment we're all sort of stuck in our own houses, and therefore, in many ways, in our own minds. And I was just wondering about what you think this could do to creativity amongst people at the moment, just because for the first time ever, we've been kind of gifted the time. I'm going on long walks and I'm thinking more than I ever sort of thought before. And even though this is obviously such a devastating time around the world, do you think this could breed quite a lot of creativity, particularly in kind of arts and entertainment?
Well, I think it will, and it has to, because anytime you're sort of forced to deal with these kinds of limitations and you're stuck at home, I mean, your mind, you start to, you start to realize how, let's say, weak you are creatively, even, because you're stuck with yourself, and it's like you can't keep doing the same thing over and over. And then you could begin to kind of exercise that creativity a little more, because most of the time you're sort of told, okay, you go to work this time, you got to do this and this and this, and everything's sort of re- told what to do. You're told, now you're sort of forced to to develop your own ways, and it exposes a lot of weaknesses too. Let's say in your relationships or whatever, and you kind of, I think that this is a great period of time where a lot of, even when you're forced to deal with your challenges, you learn a lot more about yourself and relationships you have, and you think that it's bad, oh, it's so bad, I got this, but it actually will end up being very helpful to people.
I was wondering too, do you think there's almost a bit of a misconception that greatness is limited to kind of entertainment and creativity, in the sense that, do you think greatness is a theme, or a label that you could give to doctors and people who work for NASA and stuff like that? Are there different strands of greatness, or do you think it is something that almost does feel like it's connected very much so with kind of creativity and entertaining people?
Yeah, I mean, I think for some reason society's more right now more comfortable like propping up our athletes and entertainers, and they get a lot more press, and I don't know, I'm not 100% sure why that is, because maybe a little safer or something for people to write about or talk about. There's no question in my mind that, you know, doctors, scientists, anyone, has their own levels of greatness, and there's no question in my mind that even in science, any scientist will tell you, or mathematician, that there is, exercising your creativity is only going to make you greater. You know what I'm saying? And mathematicians even look at what they're doing as an art form. You know what I'm saying? Uh, and so anyone who sort of recognizes that will only be better at what they do. It doesn't matter if you're like selling real estate. You have to be creative. Everything's changing, and you have to to be at the top of your game, you've got to be creative.
And do you think, though, when it comes to the very best, the Pelés of the world and people like that, do you think that they are born with it? Do you think it is something that sometimes some people are born with that, or do you think it is something that always has to be taught,
No,
harnessed, and looked after?
no, I really believe that you're born with gifts, that's for sure. But anyone in my film could have turned out a different way if under different conditions. There's no question. They weren't destined to, well, destiny, I mean, that's kind of a difficult thing, but in terms of, is everything's predetermined or whatever. But I think that it's not I mean, you have to, then the nurture component is as important, if not more, than the genetic component, and what you're born with, and your environment, and getting a little bit lucky, as we see in the film. I mean, it's all timing. Unfortunately, I know we want to hear that, oh no, it's your will, and if you will it to do that, there's a component to that too. That's true, but timing and luck is a component, and unfortunately it just is. That's something about growing up you've got to be comfortable with, that you know
So my final question, because I've realised I'm just slightly going over time, is just what's next? If you're sort of working on anything, well, maybe not right at the moment, but yeah, if you've got any ideas or any projects underway.
Yeah, I made a film called Red Penguins, which is another documentary about Russia in the 90s. It's a crazy story, like Fargo or Big Lebowski, but in Russia in the 90s. It's a sports story about America coming to Russia early 90s. Crazy, crime-ridden. It's a very fun but informative documentary, and that's coming out, I want to say, in the next few months. You'll be hearing about it. And then beyond that, I've been working on a couple feature related projects, and just staying open-minded.
Cool. Well, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Gabe.
Yeah, but thanks a
Cheers.
lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that
yeah.
from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.